Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and on Google Classroom post the rules for our laws of exponents. Now, let's remember that when we're talking about exponents, we have what we call the base and the exponent. Now remember, this doesn't mean 2 times 3. This is another way of expressing 2 times 2 times 2, which is completely different, right? 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 gives us 8. So when we're working with exponents, there's operations that we can make where we have certain rules for the exponents. So for example, let's say we have two things with the same base, and the base here is x. Now we're going to multiply those two together. What we would do is that we would add the exponents together, and so the answer would be x to the power of 5. And so what happens here is that x squared, remember, is the same thing as saying x times x. And x to the power of 3 is the same thing as saying x times x times x. So if you notice, we have a total of 5 x's there. So x to the power of 5 is an answer that makes sense. Now let's look at, for example, x to the power of 10 and x to the power of 5. Now in this case, we are dividing. So when we're dividing two things with the same base, and remember the important part is that they have the same base, which is x, we are going to subtract the exponents. So 10 minus 5 would be x to the power of 5. And visually, how does this make sense? X to the power of 10 is the same thing as saying x times x times x 10 times. And I believe that's 10. And then x to the power of 5 is x times x times x 5 times. Now, whenever we have something in the numerator and in the denominator, those two things cancel out. So if we cancel out everything that is the same, we are left with a total of 5 x's. Now, whenever we have these two things separated by a parenthesis, so we have x to the power of 8 to the power of 3, and they're separated by a parenthesis, this would be a situation where we just multiply those two numbers together. So x to the power of 8 times 3, which is equal to 24. Same thing with another example right here. 4 times 5 would just be x to the power of 20. Now, another important rule is whenever we have anything to the power of 0, and this could be, let's see, we have x to the power of 0, let's say we have 1,000 to the power of 0, 5 to the power of 0. The answer is always going to be equal to 1 no matter what. And this is a truth even if we have something complicated like, let's say, x to the power of 3y4 z5, something like that. If all this is raised to the power of 0, then it doesn't really matter what's inside. The answer is going to be equal to 1.